When I speak with pretty much any corporate leader, if you speak with them sort of behind closed doors, like in an intimate setting, I haven't yet encountered one that wouldn't share at some point that something is broken, like something isn't working in the way we run organizations. There's often a level of self-doubt and self-blame that comes in when they pause here, when what I believe is that it's not their individual fault, it's our whole management system, the whole way we structure and run organization that is reaching its limits, that isn't able to deal with the complexity of our times. Things are too slow, they don't know how to get people motivated, things aren't agile enough, it's too bureaucratic, things aren't innovative. Top executives are bearing this incredible pressure on their shoulders, and most of them are wearing it as well as they can. But they're all at the brink of burnout, at the brink of working too much, and there's this deep sense when they dare to go there of wonder of like, should I really do 10 more years of this? I sometimes ask them, how many more meetings will you do in your life before you retire? And this is something that I find interesting because no one talks about it. And leaders don't talk about it. So I started to seek out a number of really extraordinary organizations who had often done sort of a bit of an inner journey. These different organizations, these different founders thought that they were sort of the only crazy fools who really dare to say, you know what, the whole management edifice that we're being taught in business school, blah, that no longer works for me. But what was striking was that even though they didn't know of each other, they stumbled upon the same things. And that to me was fascinating. There's some new thoughts that are ready to be thought that different people download at the same time. When we look how management has evolved historically, we see that there's a number of sort of fundamental leaps that we've done. When we observe what's happening out there today, like some of these new organizations popping up, I think we can discern that there's sort of three of these breakthroughs that are happening. One of the breakthroughs is self-management. So we now have organizations out there with thousands of people, some of them, tens of thousands of people who are operating entirely without boss-subordinate relationship. If you look at all the complex systems in the world, none of them work with hierarchy because hierarchy cannot deal with a lot of complexity. So if you look at the human brain, 85 billion cells, there isn't one cell that is the CEO and the other cells that are the executive committee, and the CEO says you guys, if ever you have a clever thought, pass it by me, because the brain would stop functioning because that's how you cannot deal with complexity in that way. What happens is that leaders are no longer involved in meeting after meeting after meeting making decisions, because these decisions are so decentralized. But on the other hand, their role becomes critical in sort of holding the space for these new management practices, because these management practices are so countercultural, right, that everybody naturally goes back to what we know. As soon as something goes wrong, people say, oh, but we need to put back control mechanisms, we need to put back hierarchy, we need to put back... Yeah. And so the role of these leaders is constantly to remind people, remember, we do this differently. But by any means, you still absolutely want and need people who can take a broad perspective and see what's happening and propose changes and take initiatives. The really cool thing is we know now how it works. There's enough of these organizations who've been doing it, some of them for 20, 30, 40 years, that we know how incredibly robust this is, how incredibly productive it is. Well, it's actually out there. Just go and see these organizations. Sometimes I use language which, sort of borders on the spiritual, but it's simply, again, a reflection of what some of these organizations do out there, that they're no longer afraid of using language that is maybe not spiritual, but is simply language that we use in circles other than management, where we speak from the heart, where we talk about care and we talk about love and we talk about being whole, and so it's just new within the management sphere. And I think it shows the degree to which our organizations have become sort of often lifeless and aseptic places, that we find that words like care and love and like, ooh, that's dangerous. I mean, isn't that interesting? Pretty much everyone, who reads or inventing organization wants to talk to me about self-management. And so this other aspect, which I've called wholeness, is at least as important and I think as powerful, but it's more subtle. So wholeness is this idea that for some reason in almost all organizations, we feel a pressure to wear a professional mask. At all levels of the organization. We're left with the ego. We no longer have deeper conversations about what truly matters, why we're doing this work, about all the doubts that we have. There's whole aspects of ourselves, like we pretend to all be these rational beings in organizations and facts and figures, right? But everything that has to do with how we show up emotionally, how we show up spiritually, the whole realm of intuition, all of that is sort of off limits. I think incredible insight that, when you only show up with part of who you are at work, you also only show up with part of your energy, your creativity and your passion. And there are organizations who've managed to create a space where that is pretty much how we operate. And so they've put in place a number of often very simple practices that create an atmosphere of safety and of relational beauty that makes it possible for people to really show up in wonderful ways. There's a level of vibrancy, of aliveness that comes with that, that is just extraordinary. And the third breakthrough is one that one of these organizations that I researched called evolutionary purpose. And what they say is, we believe that our organization is like a living organism. It sort of has its own sense of direction, its own energy that carries it in a certain direction. And so our role as leaders is much more subtle. It's actually to listen to that evolutionary purpose. This whole predict and control, this whole vision, strategy, execution no longer makes sense to us. That only makes sense if you believe that our organization is sort of this lifeless thing. There's now, number of probably a few hundreds, maybe a few thousand organizations who are in that journey. Because they say, if we make all these great plans and say, this is where we need to go, but everything is actually calling this thing in this direction, we'll be like fools, like trying to fight something with all of our plans and all of our machineries. And so what they say is, the world has become so complex that the best we can do, the most powerful thing we can do, is not predict and control, but is sense and respond. I believe it's really sort of a historical change, and we just need to learn to adapt it to all these different environments. But I wouldn't see why there would be anything that would be off limits.